Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is Celeste Wong. I'm one of the features programmers for SF DocFest. Really excited to be here today talking with the director and producer of Anxiety Club, Wendy Lobel. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so first of all, congratulations on your film, Anxiety Club. It premiered last fall, and we're so lucky to have it as part of SF Doc Fest and really excited about it. Can you just maybe start at the beginning and tell us how this idea came about and what inspired you to make the film?
Yeah. So about 10 years ago, I was working on a kids' news program called Nick News with Linda Ellerby. It was for Nickelodeon, and I had done an episode about teens with anxiety. And I have struggled with anxiety for my adult life, but I learned so much seeing what the kids were going through. And they were all going through through exposure therapy, and I just had the sense that there are a lot of people out there struggling with anxiety. Maybe they don't even know that they have anxiety. They're feeling all these feelings and it can be torturous. And so I decided I wanted to make a film for a wider audience, a feature film about anxiety. And the comedian element came later. Originally, it was going to be regular people with anxiety and how to get from anxious to calm, and then the comedian idea kind of came a little bit later.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really curious about how you ended up focusing on comedians. It's such a brilliant choice, not only for a really entertaining documentary, but I think a lot of people, if they don't know that much about anxiety, are surprised to hear that people who are in these public-facing roles deal with anxiety. So,
Yeah,
yeah, can you maybe elaborate a little bit on how you ended up focusing on comedians
sure.
and these particular ones too?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I have to say that my husband had, when I was, early on, he's like, maybe you should get one comedian or one actor or into the mix. And so so I started looking into comedians with anxiety, and certainly there were a lot of them. um, but really what struck me is that they are people who talk about their feelings, they talk about their mental health, they talk about what's on their mind, they see the world in a unique way. They're so smart, many of them, certainly the ones in the film. And it just evolved into doing a film that was all about anxiety through the eyes of comedians, because they talk about things in a more compelling way than the rest of us do. So it really became a way to talk about a serious subject in a humorous way. And even though a lot of people think the film is about the relationship between comedians and anxiety, and or comedy and anxiety, and it's really more about the common experience of anxiety and using comedians to talk about something that so many of us feel. And I think, what I hope is that people will see the film and see these comedians, hear them talking in such a vulnerable way, and see that they're not alone, and be able to relate to their experiences, and hopefully walk away feeling more empowered to either get help or simply to talk about what they're going through.
Yeah, that leads into something I was really intrigued by, which is that vulnerability. Because I was familiar with a lot of these comedians before and seeing their work, but it's different to see them in this documentary context where we're seeing their
Yeah.
everyday lives. In some cases, we're seeing the places that they live and this intimacy. And
Yeah.
I wonder what it was like building the relationship and the collaboration with them to feel comfortable in that environment where they're not in total control in the same way they might be on stage and they have to show that vulnerability. What was it like gaining that trust and
Yeah.
working like that?
Well, I think it was helpful to them knowing that I understand the experience of anxiety. I struggled with anxiety myself. So I think they felt like I can relate. And I made sure that they felt like they were safe, and that if there was any time that they needed to stop or say I'm not comfortable with this, then we always had that open dialogue. So I don't know. I mean, it was interesting because they definitely, I think they did get more vulnerable than they typically do. I mean, when they're on stage, people are so surprised. How can comedians go on stage if they struggle with anxiety? But in some cases, that's where they feel most comfortable because they've practiced and rehearsed and have worked on their set for a long time. And they're in their, they're in charge, they're in control. So they weren't as in control in the interview. Of course, they can always say, "I don't want to answer that," but they really did get vulnerable, and I really am so grateful to them for doing that because that's what makes the film. I think that's what really makes the film special is that the comedians really talked about their innermost feelings and struggles, and I think they also felt like it was going to make a difference and that they had the awareness that the purpose of this film was to help other people who are going through the same thing. And I think when you see people who you admire who are talking about it so openly, it makes it easier to feel comfortable doing that yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so true. Um, yeah, really profound example of that is, of course, everything with Tiffany Jenkins, who I had seen some of her videos that had gone viral, of course, because yeah, I also deal with anxiety, and so I found them to be incredibly relatable and helpful, and clearly so many people did because they were so
Yeah.
popular. But um, but even the difference there, she's really vulnerable in those videos, but here it's a whole other level where you were invited into the therapy sessions, and we see so much rawness with those. Those were really compelling to watch and emotional. Can you talk a little bit about those scenes in particular and being
Yeah.
alongside Tiffany for that journey?
Yeah, that was amazing. I mean, I feel really lucky to that she was in our film. She, my colleague Janelle Draper, who's actually a comedian, also she and I were looking for potential comedians that we could follow going through exposure therapy, which is tough because it had to be someone who was comfortable with that, but also somebody who was wanting to do that and ready to do that or thinking about doing that, which ended up being the case with Tiffany. And so she's all about mental health and being open about mental health. And so I think she saw that this was going to be something, again, that would help people in terms of how we filmed that and just that whole experience. I mean, we had three cameras, not hidden from them, but just not in their faces. The crew and I were next door, in the office next door, monitoring the sessions, but we weren't in there with them. We didn't stop the session for anything. So I think after a little bit of, after a short time, they really felt like they were having a true session. Um, so I think that was a smart way of doing that. And I think that was Scott Sinkler, my DP's idea. And that really worked. Natalie, the therapist, told me after that she was really nervous that first session. She's not as much of a public person as Tiffany is. Tiffany is a very public person, and she might get anxiety in certain situations when she's in public, but I think she decided before she got into this that she was just going to give it her all. She was going to go for it. And thank God she did because, um, otherwise the therapy wouldn't have been as effective. I don't really want to give anything away. I mean, it's not like it's a cure, and anything like that. But I mean, I think she really just decided I'm going to go for it and see what happens, and that's what she did. So
Yeah, it was really moving to see her journey with that. Yeah, the way you did it really feels like we were experiencing it with her. It was challenging and moving and powerful. So yeah, that was a great element of the film. I'm curious a little bit since you worked on that series before in terms of teens and dealing with anxiety. Um, and now this with comedians and just generally adults dealing with it, and just the fact that I think anxiety has become, thankfully, a little bit less stigmatized,
Mhm.
in the last few years, although, of course, there is still that does still exist. But I'm curious if you've noticed, over the course of working on these projects, like, a difference, what maybe the biggest difference is in terms of the public perception and also how you approach the work.
Mm. Well, when I did the episode on teens with anxiety, I at that time, I wasn't even all that comfortable talking about my own anxiety to other people. And so I would say it's changed a lot. Certainly public perception has changed a lot and people don't look at it as like, "Oh, you have anxiety, you're crazy." I mean, I think it's almost more surprising when I meet people and they don't have, they don't struggle with anxiety at all. So, I think there's a lot of things in the world, that cause a lot of anxiety. I mean, what we focus on in the film is a little bit different. I mean, it's understandable that people would have anxiety over, a war in the Middle East or politics or what have you, or certain things like taking a test or going on a first date, or that's all, that's sort of normal anxiety. I mean, a certain amount of anxiety is normal. It's how it's in our DNA. But I don't know. I think people are understanding the range of anxiety better and talking about it, and the subtleties between the different kinds of anxiety and social anxiety, panic disorder. There are so many different categories within an anxiety disorder, and I think people are more open to it and understand it more, and there are more apps and there are more resources, and so it's hard for me to know, like, are people more anxious than they were? I think so. But it's hard to know, are they more anxious or are people just more comfortable talking about it? So, and certainly for myself, I mean, I will now tell anybody that I have anxiety. And I feel like that's also my responsibility, because if I'm expecting other people to talk about it, then how can I not be talking about it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that responsibility is really felt in the film, even as you approach a lot of the different stigmas related to, not just like anxiety as a whole, but the way that it affects like really different areas of life and the way that we talk about, like medication, for example, and the way that, yeah, different people experience anxiety differently, the way there's different like racialized stigmas and gendered
Yeah.
stigmas. Um, I don't know, can you talk a little bit about how you approach that? Because I really love the way that you approach that with no judgment, and no, you know, answer.
Yeah. Right, right. It really was, I mean, it really was a way to, we wanted to show the intimacy with the characters, with the comedians. And there wasn't any judgment on any of our parts. I mean, there really wasn't. I mean, my editor, Caroline Ehrenberg, and I worked very closely on making it a film that would be relatable, that we weren't I mean, there was a lot of laughter, but we weren't laughing at any of the comedians. I mean, never did we. That was very important. We didn't ever want to feel like we were making fun. I mean, it was really, we were just all in this together. I mean, Anxiety Club, it's a club. It's something that we can all understand each other. So I think there were, we wanted to bring out the things that were important to each of the comedians. For Barron, he talks a lot about race, so that was going to be a part of his story. For the other comedians, it was different. There were certain things that we certainly wanted to make sure were in the film from the beginning. We wanted to talk about relationships. We wanted to talk about certain things. But yeah, I mean, I think it was really, we really just wanted an authentic film that would be relatable and intimate and funny, and that really represented each of the characters well, who they really are.
Yeah. So the last question I'll ask, since the film premiered last fall and has been doing the festival rounds, I'm curious, like, what the response has been, if there's been any memorable reactions. I'm sure seeing it with an audience is so fun because there's so much laughter and relatability. But yeah, tell us a little bit about what the reaction has been.
The reaction has been amazing. I mean, it really has, and I mean, maybe it's. I think it surprised me a little bit. I mean, it's so many people. Like we've now been in, I think maybe 15 or so festivals, maybe more. We have several more coming up, and after each screening, inevitably, people will come up to me from the audience and talk about how their daughter has anxiety or their spouse or someone in their family or friend, and how helpful this was and how they want them to see it and how they feel that this can really make a difference. And so it's incredibly gratifying to all of us. It's at this point it's a pretty big team who put this film together, and it's very moving to see that reaction, and it's growing. We talk about how it's not just a movie, it's a movement. Now, whatever that means, we'll see. But that's what it's starting to feel like. And we're starting to do community screenings at mental health organizations, colleges and universities, comedy festivals, and then we're going to be on the digital platform Jolt, which is an amazing platform. It's pretty new, and it's incredible people behind it, and it's going to be released there on August 15th, and it'll be there for 3 months, and then we'll see what the next adventure is.
Thank you. That's really exciting to hear. I'm glad that folks can continue to recommend it and have that digital release to look forward to.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you so much for this conversation, Wendy LaBelle. Yeah, really happy to have Anxiety Club in the festival, and thank you all for watching.
thank you so much.